What happens, Ryan, if people do not get their account list right?
In a leadership position and you haven't supplied at least to your team, you are doing your entire organization a massive disservice. The best tool to this day, if you're selling to B2B, mid-market and above, is still going to be, much as most people hate it.
The most common mistake companies and SDRs are making today is skipping this step. This edition of Outbound Fluff No Sales is going to be our mini masterclass, if you will, for what is in our outbound engine. It's the 7-step process that we operationally take our clients through that allows them to have a conversation every 3 to 5 dials. It allows one rep to be in 20, 30, 40 conversations every day on the phone consistently, day in, day out, over 12 months. If this episode creates more questions for you than answers, you have any feedback on it, feel free to drop it right here in the video. Also, you can follow us on LinkedIn and DM us there.
DM Ronen, don't DM me.
Ryan's a little bit of a curmudgeon. And as always, hit the subscribe button because we're going to have a ton of videos this year. My goal is to make this the #1 podcast YouTube show that no one actually watches. So it'll be the #1. Let's get into it. So this is the complete 7-step process. By the way, this is, my hair's all messed up. This is brought to you by Callblitz because Callblitz is awesome if you're a cold caller. So check it out, callblitz.com. All right, 7 steps. Let's start at the beginning. What happens, Ryan, if people do not get their account list right?
Step 1, the list is the strategy, right? So when we're doing outbound, it doesn't matter what you say or how good you're on the phone. If the accounts that you're targeting are not a good fit for what you do. And you always want to target companies and you sell to people. So you want to start with your account list first, which is a change for a lot of ways people build their lists because they tend to go to data tools like a ZoomInfo or Apollo or one of these other tools, and they'll put in search criteria that ultimately leads them to essentially searching for the people. I want to go after CEOs or heads of sales or whatever it might be. And then that generates maybe some segmentation that they put like at a company that's this size, etc. But that's not the right way to do it. What you want to start with is the companies themselves. And every company that's on your list should look and feel like somebody that you believe. It's a hypothesis always in the beginning if you're getting started, but over time, if you have success, they should look like your best customers. That's the whole point of outbound. So we're going to spend all this time, energy, and resource going to acquire new business. You ought to take the time to ensure that the companies that you begin to invest the cost into generating a list are actually researched, qualified into what we call a swim lane with buckets, but you might call it an ICP, an ideal customer profile, which gets confused because a lot of people put in their ICP the people involved in that, but we're talking about the companies, right? And this is going to break down into firmographics, which is a basic way to look at companies, the size, the industry, the region. But it also could break down into technographics, the types of technologies that they're using at the organization, the CRMs they use, the cloud infrastructure, the marketing tech stack, whatever it might be. Right? That's technographics. It could be a new terminology that I like from this company called GetRev AI. Haven't tested their stuff yet, but they have this thing called exographics. Exographics are like signals, external factors about the organization that also combine some of the. It's a better way of thinking about this, and this could be signals in the form of job postings, changes in management, news articles. That's pretty basic. If you're new to this, maybe it's not. If they're hiring in specific roles, if they're growing in specific roles, it could also be the information that you can capture from the job postings themselves. This could be the use of technology, etc. Okay, It could also include the way people explain their organization in their profiles, right? The way they go to market, right? We are an organization that's phone first, as an example. So using these types of signals, exographics, information, they should look and feel like the type of company you want to go after. And if you just focus on firmographics or region or industry, it's not always the best fit because number one, every individual company themselves actually kind of has their own personality, right? One company could be growth minded, another company could be more stagnant or status quo, right? One company could be an innovator, really cutting edge, early adopter of new types of things. Another is a lagger and is basically a Me Too copycat. So these are the things you want to look for when you're actually thinking about selecting the right types of accounts. But if you're new, start with just basic firmographics, lookalikes, if you will, of the people that either look like people that are already paying you money or look like the accounts that you would like to be paying you money. That's accounts 101. And if you're in a leadership position and you haven't supplied at least this to your team, you are doing your entire organization a massive disservice because there's an incredible amount of waste, frustration, cost that goes into actually going out, regardless of the marketing channel that you're going to use, to eventually result in you're not a fit, right? So as much research as you can do at the account level in the beginning, actually looking at the damn website if you sell to an industry that has websites, which in 2026 most do, some don't, but most do. Look at their damn website. Do they look like they are a company you want to be doing business with? That's step one.
Defining what makes a great account and then using known data points is going to be the most basic way to start with step one. As Ryan and I are fond of saying, we target accounts, we sell to people. You don't have to have this as an end result, but an end result can actually be a somewhat workable TAM, like a total addressable market that you may have. Or another end result could be what people will call an ideal customer profile. It's the company version of like a persona. Like these are what the companies need to look like. A really helpful tool for marketing and sales teams and other campaigns that will be run off of this. If you have plans in the future to do anything with ads or other campaigns, this will come back in actually to help you again. So it has multi-uses. I would even go as far as to make one final point, which is when you're a business leader and you want to think about asymmetric value, things that have a lot of value compared to the amount of time or effort or cost it takes to do that thing. This, in my opinion, and I'd be curious, Ryan, if you agree with this probably has one of the greatest asymmetric values by getting the list right, that if you spend the time manually going through accounts to say this one is a great account for us, that is a valuable activity to the point where maybe an earlier stage company could even be worth having the founder sit down with that list and verify that.
Oh, I mean, hands down. And it's the one thing that never gets touched. You know, most people will rely on some sort of big old list purchase and say it's good enough, right? And there's the average cost to get a meeting in B2B done in most other ways outside of the way we do it is in the thousands of dollars. And so that's the ones that you actually reach and agree to meet. And if they're not qualified, it's extremely wasteful investment. That's the average cost of investment. But all the other wasted time that's put in there is what's driving that cost up. If you take the time to research the right accounts up front, you can cut your cost to actually acquire that initial meeting by like 80%.
That's insane. And so, all right, you got your list down. We're ready to move to step two. We target accounts, we sell to people. That's step two. So turning that account list now into a contact list. Now the end result of the step two, the output, is going to be a target list of accounts and contacts who work at those accounts that you would love to be in a conversation with. So, Ryan, if this part isn't done right, what's the impact of that to a company?
It's the same thing we just talked about, but now down to a situation where you're not getting the right types of signals at the right times, and it causes you to make unnecessary adjustments to your list strategy, right? You're getting all this feedback that it's not for them, it's not a fit, might, not me, not me, not me, not interested, because you're talking to the wrong roles, right? So when we think about moving into building your list of contacts, you should always think about it in the lens of the job to be done within the organization. Where most people will build lists based on titles, like we sell to heads of sales, so VP sales, VP marketing, something of that nature. That's not your target. It's a role that does that work. And this is super
so Ryan,
important.
why are titles unreliable?
Titles are unreliable because people make up all sorts of titles these days. This isn't 1960s corporate America where you start at a company and you work your way through the ranks over 20 years and retire with a watch, right? It just doesn't exist anymore. So especially in certain industries, people use titles to offset paying them more money. And so they inflate titles, especially tech, right? Everyone's a director or a VP. But you also see this in other organizations or other industries where they do it to try to inflate credibility. Like if you're selling into banking, for example, everyone's a fucking VP, right? And then because they want you to be, I'm going to set you up with my VP, but they're really just ICs, right? So a title doesn't tell us, it's directionally going to get us to where we want to be. And when you define a role, you're going to use titles to kind of make an assumption. But step one is to define the roles within the organizations based on the job to be done, right? When we target companies, we're selling to a specific person who has roles and responsibilities to do something that your product or service is either saving them cost, making them more money, or reducing risk. Those are kind of the three big indicators. And so we want to identify roles within the organizations who actually give a shit about that thing, that job to be done. And once you've defined that, then there's going to be a whole matrix of titles that you can start to build out in your list strategy that allows you to get maximum coverage within an organization. Believe it or not, the most easy role you would think to identify and build a list around today would be, let's just go to the CEO, right? If you go to any tool right now, let's say you did a great job of identifying every single account that you want to do business with. It's nice and tight. Someone in leadership literally looked at every single one. Is like, if we could get, that account in, we're going to be freaking excited. And you just want to go after the CEOs and you just type in CEOs, you're probably only going to get like 40, 50, 60% of the results back by just putting in the search term CEO. What you'll also get back is administrative assistant to the CEO, chief of staff to the CEO. You'll get CEOs that show up on the list, but they're really an intern at the company and they're a CEO of a multi-level marketing company somewhere else as well because they have two roles in the company. When you think about CEO, you're trying to think about the top executive within an organization, and that could be, it could also include presidents in some organizations. It could include founders in smaller organizations, and it could include a whole swing of things. You want to say, here's the role itself. We want the lead, the head executive, the chief executive, if you will. But it's not just a chief executive officer. There's a whole matrix there. And so when you're building your lists, you're going to want to define the role and then create this matrix of the actual potential titles. And then the next step within that is to start to understand as quickly as you possibly can how to evaluate if that person, based on the title, is actually the person you're trying to go after. Now, CEO, again, let's just go right to the example. You could easily weed out an executive assistant to CEO. It's annoying because you might have just used a credit to grab that. If you're mass buying this, you didn't go and look. But if you actually look at other titles, let's say VP sales is a common example of this. We want to look at how somebody is actually either progressing through their career, if we're using LinkedIn as a good source, which most people will these days if you're selling to B2B. We're going to look at how they're defining themselves if they've created some sort of information on their profile. Some don't, but the ones that do, it can be easy to spot.
Being able to actually go in and have a second tier beyond just does the title match? That's going to be the best way to verify the contact you're adding now to your list that you're going to then later try to sell to or talk to is actually the kind of contact you want to be speaking with.
And another way to identify this too, and some of these harder to identify the actual leader or the top executive that's in this job to be done framework, if it's a bigger organization, is to just see if there's multiple people with the same title, right? So you do some research and it's like, oh, I got VP sales. Well, if there's 5 VP sales, well, that's probably not the head of sales. There's going to be someone else with a chief revenue officer or an SVP or something of that nature. And so you can start to begin to create this org chart in that sense. You can also use LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn to look at people who viewed this profile also viewed this profile. And sometimes that helps you easily spot the leader. Just like with the account list, once you get to the contact list, you're going to want to actually review the contacts to ensure that they are indeed the people that you want to now move to the next phase of this process to start investing lots of money into, right? It gets very expensive if you don't take the time to evaluate.
Okay, so that takes you through step 2. You now have your accounts and your contacts that have had the most critical element added to them. Some sort of verification. You know that it's not just the quick and dirty version of it that's going to have a lot of bad accounts, bad contacts on it. Step 3 is enrichment. We got to add data to the contacts to get a hold of them. Emails, phone numbers, whatever is going to be enriched in there. This is where people usually think about the start and end of all list building. Usually this is it. It's just, do you have a Zoom info? Do you have Apollo? And that's the whole thing. With the enrichment piece, Ryan, what is something that most people don't think about when it comes to relying on a single database like Apollo? Is that enough to enrich your contacts with phone numbers if you're going to now try to call them? Or is there more that people should know about?
Yeah, so when you're building a list from a database like an Apollo or a Zoom Info, it's important to understand because most people don't even know what enrichment means, right? When you pull a contact record, when we say enrichment, it's getting the contact information. We're defining enrichment as the contact information associated with the contact. So if you pulled it from a database, obviously it would be there. The one thing about every database is that they all suck in terms of total quality. There is not one data vendor that has better than, let's say, 80% like actual updated and verified data, even though they tout much higher rates than that. You're still going to get about 20% just blatantly bad data. It's super simple to identify by just trying to engage the channel. You make a call, it's a bad number. You send an email, it bounces. Their LinkedIn profile isn't even fucking correct. Like it's a broken link. It's like you're not going to find anything that's better than 80% on just the actual information itself. And then the other thing is coverage. So not every database is going to have the same coverage. So some databases do a good job with coverage, and then the data itself is shit. So it looks like they have it, but once you call it, it's bad, which it's a red flag sometimes. In other cases, they just don't. They're more focused on quantity, so they don't have coverage, but it is good. But then you're going to miss out on the possibility of finding an additional phone number somewhere else. And so when we say enrichment, we're talking about getting the actual contact information for the people that you're going after. And if you're following these 3 steps first, you got the accounts, which, by the way, when you're getting them, you probably should have something like the account name, their website, and if they're on LinkedIn, their company LinkedIn URL. That's the most basic shit you should have in that initial list. When you get to the contact, literally all you need when you're going through this process is at least their LinkedIn URL. Okay. You don't have to go in and put like their name and title and stuff, because when you move to enrichment, once you have a LinkedIn URL for that individual that you want, you can pull out the rest of that stuff, the first name, the title, and it will go to the company, etc. what we're looking for is as much coverage with quality as possible in this step. And so the best tool to this day, if you're selling to B2B, not SMBs, but mid-market and above, is still going to be ZoomInfo, as much as most people hate it. If you follow our process of identifying the companies first and the people second, ZoomInfo is going to have the best contact enrichment quality as possible, coverage and quality. But there's plenty of other tools that you can add on that are going to either fill gaps where there's numbers missing or provide alternatives once you've moved to the next phase that we'll talk about as an alternative number to try for phone. Email is fucking table stakes these days. There's a million tools out there that can get you an email address by guessing it and then having all the different variations. But phone is what we're after here in our process. And we want, when we talk about enrichment, as much coverage and as much quality as possible. And you may or may not have heard of this idea of a waterfall, but in all cases, if you really want full coverage into your market, you want to use multiple solutions. Now, if you have a massive TAM, right, and it's not difficult to easily identify the types of companies that you want to go after, and it wasn't painstaking to go through and identify all these people, and the people that you want to go after are fairly easy to identify. Let's say like CEOs again. It's not as easy to think, but like lots of them out there. Then you can kind of start with one, and then backfill as you will. But most sources again are going to be not as good as you think, and there's a lot of waste and frustration when you go cheap route first. But we'll talk about the next stage around the importance of testing and then understanding how to actually waterfall your data in the most appropriate way.
All right. So at this point, if you're still with us, you now have a workable list. But just because you have identified great accounts, contacts, have some phone numbers now, doesn't mean you're going to be able to get a hold of them. Also, like Ryan just said, you might not have actually identified a phone number for all of those contacts. So some of your contacts are not yet even workable. You need at least a way to contact them to work them. But let's say you got your workable list. The most common mistake companies and SDRs are making today is skipping this step. And this step is, I think, going to be the biggest game changer in 2026 as well. For the companies who figure it out, they're going to be the ones having success in cold calling. This is the same step that Ryan has built and sold a company on. Ryan, tell the people what this is all about. Step 4.
So once we have all of our contacts enriched with as much data as you're willing to pay for or possible, then you're going to want to run it through a channel validation process. Right? So if you've read Outbound Sales No Fluff, our list before this is at the uncontacted stage. We're moving into working. And in order for us to do that, we have to make sure that we are trying every single number that we have to ensure that it is ideally reachable. Okay, so when you take a list of data, you're going to want to obviously only call people that are reachable, right? There's 3 types of leads on this list. There's going to be some bad data. Like I said earlier, 20% or maybe even more of that list is probably going to be bad. There's going to be some workable data. This is the worst kind of data. This is the data that you feel like you're going to get somebody on the phone, but you call them into infinity and they're not going to pick a phone. Then there's going to be reachable data. That's what we're after. If you call enough times, they'll actually pick up the phone. The way you can actually do this is either by slugging through the list and running the validation process by checking if a number delivers or not. And I won't go into details, go read the book, but you can do it manually, or you can use TitanX. TitanX is the Disneyland Fast Pass to run your list through this process. What it's going to do is take all of the contact and the numbers associated with those contacts and score them of which ones are most likely reachable, which ones are most likely workable, which ones are most likely bad. And by doing that, you're going to eliminate about 80 to 90% of the total dials that your reps would ever make to that list to get to the exact same conversations you would on that list otherwise. And it happens in a 24-hour period. Okay, so you take a list, you score the list, you focus on the ones that go reachable, and you're going to turn your entire system into a conversation machine, and eliminate a shit ton of waste and frustration. What this is also going to do is give you insights into the quality of the list that you're trying to process. Like I said already, it will give you the breakdown of the percentage of which one's bad, which ones are workable, and which ones are reachable. And that's going to give you an indicator on, do you need to add more enrichment? And then also, if you're working with us, we can show you what the actual cost would be to continue to process that list, and ultimately be your future cost to earn a conversation with those contacts.
That's awesome. And it's also something that, as you're sharing the detail of what validation is all about, I can already sense, even where I was a few years ago, this is the kind of thing that still so many people in our space know nothing about or very little about. And one of the coolest things working with you, Ryan, recently has been just how deep this field goes. I'm seeing more and more and more of it, learning, of course, from you and with what we do with our clients as we go along. But this was the coolest unlock. Going from what almost all SDR and AEs and outbound sales teams do. They create the list and they start working it. Literally, they start calling. And we say, no, here's a step before you start calling. If you're going to go in and call it, you're only going to get that like 1 to maybe 5% pickup rate. Huge amount of your time is going to be wasted. And part of what's happening in that wasted time is you are calling people who never answer. When you run a validation layer, you're seeing, is this person even reachable before I call them? I'm essentially trying to identify all the people who never answer first, and then I don't even try to call them when it's time to call. That small, it even sounds super simple thing, is actually a huge unlock. If you do that one thing alone, I don't know if, Ryan, if you think this is over exaggeration, but that one thing alone could by itself 3 to 4x your daily output without doing anything else.
It will. It will.
Mm-hmm. And so just think about that. If you can quadruple your conversations every day with just this one step, this is why Ryan built Phone Ready Leads, which became TitanX, and why TitanX just this past week raised $27 million to continue to grow, and why we continue to use it with all our clients, or AKA, as Ryan calls them, the Disney Fast Pass. So you could either do it yourself, which is going to be painstaking, or pay pennies on the dollar to have TitanX do it for you. Once this is done, you're almost ready to start dialing. But there is a really important step in between. And this step is more about the tech setup. Ryan, why is it today that I could look at my phone from the last 24 hours and I'll notice that of the missed calls, a big chunk of them say likely spam, telemarketer, junk? Why is that happening, and how do I make sure that if I'm actually going to now call people, maybe even I did that TitanX step, that I don't end up calling on a number that now won't get picked up when it should?
Does this show up? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Spam,
Potential spam.
potential spam, robocaller. Yeah. The reason that's happening is because just like with email deliverability, which we all are pretty familiar with. If you're, listening to this, you've probably done some cold email in the past. If you send emails to people that haven't opted into your email too fast or don't want to hear from you, the email servers, Google and Outlook, are going to block you. It's not going to deliver. Same thing's happening on the phone. 3 or 4 years ago now, I can't even remember when it first came out. I think it was 2022. There's a mandate called Stir Shaken, which was aimed at trying to combat robocalling. And what that did was put a system in place that is aimed at trying to make sure that your cold call doesn't deliver. Okay. And so every carrier is going to have its own little algorithm, but the reality is most people don't understand how those work. Everyone's a little bit different, but at the end of the day, if you're dialing too quickly, your pick rate is really low, and or your talk time is really low. And then finally, if somebody that you're calling physically marks you as spam, just like with email, you're going to get one of these flags. And again, every carrier is a little bit different, but most people are shocked on the basis of what some of these look like. Based on my understanding, and I've been, at this for, literally been focused on how to get people on the phone. That's all I've cared about for almost a decade now. I used to do it with the parallel dialers. Now I do it. Then I built it with phone array leads. So it's hundreds of millions of dials that I've looked at. This is the way it looks. You don't want to make more than 10 dials per hour from one phone number. Okay. That sounds crazy, right? If you have an outbound sales team, they're probably going to make more than 10 dials in one session. If you're making more than 10 dials in 1 hour from the same phone number, you're going to get spammed, likely get flagged. You don't want to have a connect rate lower than 10%. Okay. You also don't want to have your talk time, your average talk time across all of the attempts that are going out that are less than a minute, which is hard to do. And then you also want to make sure that you're mitigating people actually marking you as spam. So the way to combat this is to use tools that actually solve for this. And we use FrontSpin. It is the best dialer on the market that has been specifically designed to support call deliverability. The first thing they do is allow you to own, you're not doing random numbers, not spoofing numbers, but you own a bank of numbers. Okay. When you own those bank of numbers on each user, you're able to rotate them as you call. So the same number doesn't go back to back to back to back to back. Best practice here is for every, if you're making 10 dials in an hour, you'd want to have at least 2 numbers, right? So you're not getting one number 10 times. Okay. So if you're doing 50 dials an hour, you want to have 10 numbers. Okay. So it's like 2 for every 10 on an hourly basis to ensure that you're not going to be flagged. So you own those numbers. They rotate them. That's what they do. The second thing they do is offer the ability to monitor those numbers as they're going and actually alert you if a carrier has flagged you. What that will do is immediately pull that out of rotation. They have a service on the back end that will go in and remediate it and get it back in as quickly as possible to ensure that you're not continuously throwing out a flag. It's impossible. Literally, it's impossible to avoid these things, but this will mitigate it tremendously. The next thing that FrontSpin is doing is they're not parallel dialing. So it's not so fast. It's 1-to-1, and they're not based on Twilio. Most dialers out there are on Twilio. So the actual carrier itself knows the carrier that's coming out and knows it's coming from it. They have direct relationships with all the carriers, which allow for better deliverability. The final piece, which is super important, is the actual connectivity without a pause, a beep, or a delay, because they're not on Twilio, is a huge impact, because that moment when someone picks up the phone, it's very clear, it's right away, it's instantaneous, so you're not getting marked as spammed. So number rotation, number monitoring, call deliverability, they're the number one dialer on the market for this. That's what we install here. If you're using any other dialer right now, you're doing yourself an extreme disservice. If you actually care about getting all this work that you've done, the research, the enrichment, the scoring, to actually result in as many conversations as possible.
So that gets you a phone number that's deliverable, meaning it'll actually dial with a caller ID that doesn't show up as spam. And that's one part of this step, getting the system set up, making sure ready to go. But let's get into the final 2 pieces of this. You got all this set up, you're ready to roll. Now we got to make sure that you have reps that are plugged in and going. In our world today, with a successful rep versus the reps that are unsuccessful when it comes to cold calling, what does an average day look like for a cold caller in terms of how much activity they're doing and what should be the results from that activity? Talk to us a little bit about the professional execution part, the part that cold callers are trying to do every day.
So as optimized as you can get when you actually get everything dialed in is that a rep in 1 hour should be able to execute about 30 dials an hour, roughly. When you take into consideration the actual time to deliver the call, navigation of phone numbers. By the way, we kind of skipped this earlier, but you want to make sure you're calling company lines too. But the navigation of numbers, the time it takes to dial, also a little bit of wrap time. 30 dials means that you're making a call every 2 minutes. right? So 30 dials is about as optimal as you can get. And for those 30 dials, you want to have between 6 to 8 connects, somewhere in that range. And it should be around 4 plus completions. Okay. So for every hour we're in the system, that's kind of the North Star and optimal as it gets. Reps in our system are set in a way where they have a time block on their schedule, 1.5 hour blocks, 4 of those a day with some breaks in between. That's 6 hours of dial time. And if they're doing at least that 30 in each of those sessions, you're up to about 100. What is that? 150 dial. What am I?
Be 180 dials, but the range is usually going to be 150 to 180 is the standard range for most of our callers. Some exceed it.
Yeah, I can't do math this afternoon. That's right. 6 times 3. 6 times 3 is 180. So 180 is very doable. Now, depending on within those connect rates, your talk time, that can go down. So you want to pace that between 20 to 30 dials per hour. And again, in that time frame, you're targeting 3 to 5 completions for every hour that you're in the system. And again, if you do that 6 times a day, that's where we're in that 20 to 30 completions as a North Star.
And let's be clear here, Ryan, our belief through experience and numbers and what we see in the results is that a full-time rep should be a cold calling only rep. We don't set our reps up in the Outbound Engine systems that we build for our clients to do email, list building, or social outreach. Now, there might be cases where it makes sense to do that. That's fine. But when you're trying to find someone who's an excellent cold caller, this is what they should be doing all day long, which brings us into the last step, step 7. This step has a saying we're fond of, that there's fat stacks in the circle backs. Ryan, when we say that, what are the numbers when it comes to doing the follow-up? Is there any proof that it's a fruitful way, a better conversation than the first one?
Yeah. So when you're cold calling, again, we're trying to target about 4 completions and 1 positive outcome, which is we call an activation, which could be a meeting scheduled or a very, very, very strong follow-up that should be followed up with immediately. So the numbers show that your conversion rate on a completion, anywhere from 8 to 12% cold, is very good. You're right on line. When it comes to follow-ups, the majority of people that you call right now from a cold call are not going to trust you. They don't know you. It's out of the blue. Timing's off. Whatever it might be. You're just not going to convert much higher than that ratio unless you've got a very, very strong offer at the right time. Okay, because we're talking about cold calling. So cold's around 8 to 12%. When it comes to follow-up, you can expect about a 1.5 to 3x increase in your conversion rates. And this is where so many people struggle because they think that it's one shot, one opportunity. But the fast stacks and the circle backs, because when you're doing this entire thing, is target, message, channel, timing. We've just talked about targeting. We haven't gotten into messaging here, but channel, we're talking about the phone, and timing. Timing is the number one thing that drives success over time. And if we do a good job of collecting the right information, and we have the right people at the right accounts, it's all going to come down to timing. And you're going to see about a 1.5 to 3x increase in that conversion rate from your cold to your follow-up list.
And the output of this step, as well as all 7 together, is you're going to have predictable pipeline, consistent results as long as you stick to these steps. And the best part is that it doesn't diminish over time. Unlike other channels, which might hit a ceiling or you might get a pop of results and then a fast dip, as long as you consistently run this, you're able to consistently see similar results.
Actually, it gets better over time.
That's
because you're only focused on follow-up.
It actually gets better over time. And maybe a new saying is outbound compounds. All right. Well, this was a dense episode. If you have follow-up questions or things that you would like us to help clarify, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, drop a comment down below. If you loved it, hate it, let us know either way. And as always, hit subscribe. I'm Ronen Pessar. This is Ryan Reisert. We are the Outbound Operators, and thanks for tuning in to the special edition where we break down the 7 steps of the Outbound Engine.